On today's video, I'm going to be putting the veneer on the headstock of this custom base I'm building. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is kind of lay my pattern on here and see what I'm working with. So I'm going to line up the center line roughly with the center of the neck. So we're going to be really close to the edge right there. But aside from that, we got lots of wood to work with. So now the next thing we got to do is just get these ears sanded down to the thickness of the rest of our headstock. So I think probably what I'm going to do for that is just use my random orbital sander to get that going, because it removes a lot of material very quickly. Then I'll move on to hand sanding it to get to its final thickness. So it turns out I thought I was recording with this camera, but I wasn't, so I'll just repeat what I said. I'm using my 5-inch random orbital sander with a 60 grit sanding disc. Now, one thing I'm going to do is put some pencil marks here, because I don't want to sand this part at this point. So I'll know if I get into these pencil marks, I got to stop. And I'm also going to put some pencil marks, because again, we don't want to sand that down. You know what? At this point, I don't even know why I have all this extra length here. It's just making my job a little bit more difficult. So I think I'm just going to cut these off. Okay, now we can get back to sanding. So I got this basically rough sanded to the thickness I want with the orbital sander. You know what? We're going to bring back the old screen door sanding block. It hasn't set me wrong yet. Okay, so I'm just going to show how I'm checking for this straight edge. So right here, I got a straight edge. This is a real fancy straight edge you bought at the store. So what you do is you take the straight edge and you run it along the wood, and you're looking for light to poke through. Now, see what I mean? If I tilt the straight edge, you can see the light poking through. Now, if this wasn't flat, you would see light poking through. But because it's flat, you don't see any light poking through. Now you can go the other direction too, like this. Sorry, this is very hard to film, but just showing you the idea. If it wasn't flat, you'd get light poking through. Okay, so I finally have gotten this down to thickness. It's flat, it's straight, it's smooth. I'm ready to glue my veneer onto it. So this was actually really tricky to do. Not so much the front, but the back was pretty tricky to sand just because of this angle here. As you can see, I got into the neck a little bit, so I'm not too happy about that. We'll cross this bridge when we get to it, fixing it. So the next thing I got to do is glue the veneer onto the face of this. So I got these 2 pieces of walnut. They call it hobby board, but it's like a 1/8 inch thick veneer. Problem is it's not wide enough to cover the headstock on the base. So what I'm going to have to do is glue these together side by side. I want to get it so that it's got some cool looking grain, but I'm not sure how I'm going to put these together so that it looks cool. So I'm just going to work on that right now. So I cut one piece in half. I sanded the edges on my storm door sanding block. They're now a perfect match. What I'm going to do now is just glue this together with some super glue. So just going to put down a bit of wax paper so I don't glue it to the table. And I just got some of my thin super glue here. And I'm just going to press it together nicely. Just going to hit that with a bit of accelerator so I don't glue it to myself. Okay, so it's glued together now. As good as we need it for right at this moment. I'm just gonna quickly sand this side. Yeah, I think that'll look pretty good like that. So we'll just trace it out. So we've got our walnut head veneer glued together. The headstock is going to fit on it like this. So there should be all kinds of trippy grains on the headstock, which I think will look pretty good. So just to be clear, the headstock veneer is going to sit onto the head like this, right? So that will give us, with our headstock thickness and our 1/8 veneer thickness, we'll be looking at about a 5/8 of an inch total thickness. Now what I'm actually going to do is, in between these two layers, I got some of this birch veneer. Ideally I would have got maple, but they didn't have it. They just had birch, and I mean, it's pretty close to the color of maple and look of maple. So what I'm going to do is actually sandwich some of this birch in between the two layers of walnut. And then what that's going to do is, when we go and cut the headstock out, there's going to be like a birch colored line, kind of like a binding all the way around the headstock. This stuff is also not as wide as the headstock, so I'm going to have to actually glue a couple of pieces of this together as well. Okay, so that was pretty easy to cut with a knife. Now I'm just going to redo the same process of gluing these together edge to edge. So to kind of make things a bit easier on myself, I'm just going to trim this birch down a bit to fit the walnut a little bit better. So now you can kind of see what I mean with the little birch in there. It just gives it a nice little bit of a stripe. Just a little bit of something, you know. I think it's going to look cool. So I guess now is as good a time as any to establish a center line on our neck. So 616 thousandths is the thickness of our center little strip of wood. So half of that would be 308 thousandths. 308 thousandths. So that'll be from the edge of our center strip to the center. So I'm just going to mark that at this end of the neck, mark it at this end of the neck, and I'm just going to extend it. And that's how we're going to get our center line on our neck, our actual center line. So now I have a center line that goes all the way around my neck. It's kind of hard to see, at least for me, but goes all the way around. Okay, so now we got our center line on here. We can start planning to glue our veneers on. Now, I'm just going to make the center line of the veneer match the center line of the guitar. Alright, so I've had to get kind of creative with my clamping. So you can see I've got the neck actually clamped to my workbench, and it's coming way out here. And this is where I'm going to be doing my gluing. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to get this keyed in so that my center line, this center line, and this center line matches this center line. So I think what I'm going to do is throw in a couple of pins. So I've drawn out on here, you can see my outline of my headstock shape. This is just a rough outline. So anywhere outside of this outline, I can throw a couple of holes for some pins, and it's not gonna affect anything. You know, once the headstock's cut out. So that's what I'm gonna do. I've got this center line lined up nicely on this will focus. I've got the center line of the veneers lined up nicely with the center line of the neck. So what I'm going to do is just drill a couple of pins in outside of the headstock outline. Just one up here and probably one down here. And then that will help me locate these when they're all covered with glue. So for pins, what I'm going to be using is just a couple of old 3/32 drill bits. So I'm literally just going to drill through this. And there we go. We got one alignment pin. Then we'll come over here outside of the headstock outline, do the same thing. There we go. So now we have 2 alignment pins. Now the next thing we're going to have to do is come up with some kind of clamping caul. So we're going to have to get a piece of wood that will cover this whole area and also have holes in the same spot for these pins to go through. We'll just use a piece of plywood. I'm just going to quickly cut this out. Okay, so we got our caul cut out. Now we got to drill our holes for our pins. So I'm just going to overlay the headstock veneer onto it and then just drill through these holes. Okay, so now I got my holes. I'm just going to make them bigger. Okay, so now when we get these aligned, okay, see how that aligns beautifully? The center lines are perfect now. We don't have to worry about it moving around when we're gluing it. Now, we can take our caul that we made with the bigger holes, because it's not needing to be precise, and we can just sit it over top. Then we can put our clamps all around. This will distribute the force of the clamps so that the center gets clamped as nicely as the outside, and we'll be laughing. So, at this point, I'm going to get ready to glue. So I'll be using my regular original Type Bond again for this. So first thing is I'm just going to get this all glued up. Maybe we'll pull these pins out for the time being. Okay, at this point, I'm just going to put my pins back in just in case this glue starts causing me problems. Okay, so we got our pins in. The next step will be to get our birch veneer glued up. I don't really have a place to put the glue onto this, so it's going to be a bit messy probably. Now we'll put more glue on this side of it. Now we'll put some glue on our walnut veneer. Okay, so we're all perfectly lined up now, all glued. The next step is our glue caul. That's C-U-A-L. So the first thing I'm going to do though is put some wax paper because we do not want to glue the caul to the headstock. So just like that. Just like that. Then we slide our caul over top. Now we're ready to throw some clamps on. So let's just start over here. We got one there. We'll get one there. Put one there. We'll put one there. We'll put one here. And then we'll put another one right here. Now you can see, hopefully, the amount of glue that is coming out of there. So I definitely put more than enough glue. She's dripping. I think what I'm going to do is just leave this here to dry overnight, and then I'll come back tomorrow and we can continue with this build. Okay, so I have let this dry overnight. I'm just getting ready to unclamp this veneer now, see how it looks. Okay, so one thing I am going to do is just trim these veneers down so they're the same size as the headstock. Okay, so I almost forgot to mention what I'm going to do here. So you can see the headstock veneer is right on that break angle, but it's sticking up way past here. I'm just going to sand it so that this surface will basically continue onto the headstock veneer. All right, so you can see what I was talking about. I got that big bump sanded down smooth. So this whole surface is nice and smooth, and my fretboard is going to cover up this part of it. And you can see I sanded the side of the headstock to kind of reveal what it will look like. So you've got that nice white stripe coming through there from that birch veneer we put in. So just a nice little touch. I mean, this isn't going to be the most fanciest base in the world, but you know, I think having that will be just a nice little something, you know? Okay, that's it for this video. Things turned out pretty good if you ask me. I was kind of hoping to get the truss rod channel made as well, but this video is already getting pretty long, so that's going to have to wait until next week. After that, I'll be shaping the fretboard, gluing on the heel, figuring out how I'm going to glue the neck onto the body, carving the neck, shaping the body, etc., etc., etc. So if you aren't subscribed but want to see how this build will turn out, make sure to subscribe. And if you are subscribed, thank you for subscribing and watching my videos. Until next week, talk to you later.